Okay. Call the meeting to order. At 6:08. Ted, would you lead the flag salute?
Place your hand on your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Call roll, please.
Roll call. Councilmember Aaronkrantz.
Here.
Warren. Here. Councilmember Zeitz.
Present.
Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Haggerty.
Here.
And Mayor Brown.
Okay, I would like the council to approve the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? No. Okay, it's been moved
Second.
and seconded. Oh, you have to call for that, I'm sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved 4-0. 1. Brown absent.
Okay, under special presentations and proclamations, we have a presentation by the Local Agency Formation Commission.
Good evening. I just want to do a little presentation on disincorporation this evening. The areas I want to cover are just a little bit of disincorporation history, what little bit of history there is. Some of the reasons that a city may want to look into disincorporation. I'll spend the most time on the process and then also talk a little bit about some of the limitations on disincorporation, the effect of disincorporation timing, and maybe some alternatives. And then if you have any questions, I'd be happy to at least try to answer them. As far as history goes, disincorporation is incredibly rare. There have been disincorporations throughout the state over the years. There's actually been 17 disincorporations. Several of those cities actually reincorporated at a later date. There have not been any recently. The last disincorporation to be processed under LAFCO law was actually right here in Riverside County, the city of Cabazon. And that disincorporated, I believe, was effective either in 71 or 72, after having incorporated sometime in the 50s. Most recently, there was an attempt to legislatively disincorporate a city in Los Angeles County. I believe that was the city of Vernon. That was about 4 or 5 years ago. It never really made it out of the legislature. Regarding reasons to at least cause a city to consider disincorporation, look into disincorporation, there's a few. Probably the one that we hear about most commonly now is unsustainable fiscal situations where revenues will not keep up with costs, and there could be several reasons for that. It could be due to rising labor costs, either direct labor or contract service costs, loss of tax or economic base, and there we could be talking either about loss of, say, a major retail outlet if the city has a large car dealership or something like that, that it's really relying on that sales tax revenue for, or in the case of a sudden change in the economic base, perhaps a very large employer, base closure, or some large or industrial user in town. decides to relocate or just shuts down, that could cause fiscal stress on the city. Retirement obligations is another one that you hear a lot about, of course. Another one is long-term political dysfunction or instability. That was actually the case, perhaps the prime case in Cabazon. Almost since the incorporation of that city, they had political instability, and I'm not talking about little fights in the council or between factions in the city. This was long-term sustained instability on the council where they had almost annual resignations. I think they had less than a full council, more than they had a full council. I think at the time of disincorporation, I still believe they had a vacant seat. Unmanageable debt, of course, is another reason that could be caused either by a large judgment or continual borrowing, either internal or external. Now, I will say, in case of debt, that disincorporation might not be the best thing to look at, that bankruptcy might be an option to look at first, although bankruptcy itself, there are hurdles to that as well. And most importantly, I'll probably repeat this a couple of times tonight, disincorporation does not make debt go away. There's no magic wand that will make debt go away. It's still there. Most debt is constitutionally protected, or certainly bonded indebtedness is, and disincorporation does not discharge that debt in any way. The process of disincorporation, I do want to mention right up front that the last time I gave a presentation on disincorporation was probably about 2 years ago, maybe even a little longer than that. And there were a lot of questions back then because the statutes regarding disincorporation were so antiquated that some of them were actually unconstitutional. They were written prior to Prop 218, and there were provisions in there that just made it almost an automatic tax if there was debt remaining after all the city's assets, the disincorporating city's assets had been used. The Board of Supervisors were directed to levy a tax on the residents. Well, you can't do that now without a vote. So last year, CalAFCO, our statewide association, sponsored some legislation, AB 851, that rewrote those antiquated and in some cases unconstitutional statutes related to disincorporation. The emphasis of those changes in state law was really on getting a lot of information at the beginning of the process. Surprisingly, there wasn't even a fiscal analysis of disincorporation required. The only fiscal requirement that was in the old statutes was the requirement for either LAFCO or the Board of Supervisors at the end of the process, after the effective date of disincorporation, to prepare a financial statement. So there were some major changes, again, much of them having to do with getting information at the beginning of the process. The process itself is really very similar to the process to incorporate a city. A lot of similarities. Initiation, it can be initiated either by resolution of an affected agency. An affected agency can be the city itself, it can be the county, it can be any special district that overlies city territory. It can also be initiated by petition of registered voters. The petition threshold is 25% of the registered voters within the city. That is the highest petition threshold within LAFCO law, and for good reason. Disincorporating the city is something that's very serious. It shouldn't be done on a whim, obviously, but and that is demonstrated by that very high petition threshold. LAFCO cannot initiate disincorporation on its own. Regardless of who initiates a disincorporation proposal, the proponents really need to indicate upfront what their expectations of disincorporation are. And that's sort of a reality check to make sure that disincorporation is being looked at for the right reasons and demonstrate why disincorporation is the best course of action. There may be other courses, less extreme courses of action that should be pursued. The most important part of really two important parts of the disincorporation application are the plan of services And that plan of services is really a statement of the proponents, whoever that may be. And not only the proponents, but of those agencies that are proposed to take over the services. And you'll see why in a moment. The plan of services needs to include a description of all the current services that are provided by the city, including the levels of service that are currently provided, which ones are proposed to continue, and which, if any, are just proposed to be discontinued and no longer offered as public services. It should include a delineation of all bonds, all bond debt, assessments, taxes, any community facilities districts, joint powers agreements that the city is part of, any other obligations, including very significantly any pension obligations, long-term leases, or other contracts that the city has entered into. In most cases, municipal services are going to be assumed by the county. As I mentioned before, the levels of service levels of service that are currently being provided by the city are to be included in the plan of services, but also the levels of service that the assuming agency will be providing, because they could be different. Any current financing of services and how that successor entity will finance the services should be included in the plan of services. If there are any bankruptcy proceedings that are pending, an explanation of those should be included. Any judicial or regulatory orders related to services. So if a city had a wastewater treatment plant that was out of compliance and had an order, a cease and desist order or something of that nature, that needs to be known up front. The idea is to be as transparent as possible, so not only the constituents within the city know what's going on and can make an intelligent choice, but also the entities that are proposed to take over the service, to take over those assets of the city, know what they are getting into. And for all those reasons, the development of the plan of service requires the participation of those successor agencies, whether it be the county or maybe perhaps there's special districts that are involved that are going to take over services. Those successor entities absolutely need to be involved in the preparation of the plan of services. We would likely require that any agency that's proposed in the plan of services to assume some of those service responsibilities, that their general manager, executive officer, or whatever position that is, sign off on that plan of services. One of the new requirements, as I mentioned, getting that fiscal information up front, there is now a comprehensive fiscal analysis that's required for disincorporation, much like there is for an incorporation. That comprehensive fiscal analysis has to include costs and revenues for the city in the previous 3 fiscal years, both the operations costs and any capital expenditures that have occurred. The anticipated costs and revenues to those entities proposed to assume the services, and it needs to address all debt and other obligations, as I mentioned before. Those should be included both in, at least qualitatively, in the plan of services and quantitatively in the comprehensive fiscal analysis. From that information, LAFCO will determine the property tax transfer. It's a statutory formula based on the services that are going to be transferred. Again, it was prepared to be analogous, directly analogous to the property tax transfer calculation that is used for an incorporation. So the same thing, though, the idea is that the proportion of property taxes that are used to finance those services would go to those entities that are assuming the services. Once we receive all that, we'll prepare a staff analysis of everything that's submitted, make a recommendation to the commission. The commission would hold I forgot a very important step. All that information that we receive, we would transmit all that to all the affected agencies, any other interested parties, anyone that had requested the information, and that's an opportunity for those agencies and public or private entities to comment on the proposal prior to it going to hearing. And also, if necessary, based on those comments, the fiscal analysis would or could require revision. Once all that is done, it would go to a public hearing. The commission could hold one or more public hearings on the disincorporation. At the end of that, the commission could deny the proposal outright. It could approve it. Most likely, it would be approved with some terms and conditions. If it is approved in any manner, it would go directly to an election. There's no protest hearing required. It would just go straight to the electorate, and a simple majority of those voting would decide the disincorporation itself. However, some of the terms and conditions that could be placed on a disincorporation could require a 2/3 vote. And if there is a condition for, say, a tax measure that requires a 2/3 vote, if that was not approved, if that did not achieve that 2/3 vote, even if the disincorporation passed by a majority, it would not be effective. So some of the terms and conditions, well, they would generally specify how the incorporation is to be implemented, or even if it would be, again, in the case of something that is required to take place prior to completion of a disincorporation. But typically they would include transfer of existing property taxes and any other taxes. It could include taxes to satisfy obligations if the fiscal analysis showed that there was not enough assets to cover the city's obligations. And if there was a tax required, that again is not automatically levied, as in the pre-Prop 13, Prop 218 days, it would require a vote. So the condition would read something like, prior to completion of disincorporation, a measure, tax measure, special tax measure in the amount of so much would require passage. And that, if it's a special tax, would require a 2/3 vote. Another term and condition could be the requirement for formation of a special district in certain cases. There would be terms and conditions specifically requiring either the continuation and assignment of specific services, or perhaps discontinuation of services. Could be a passage of tax measure to continue those services at a perhaps an enhanced level than say the county might otherwise provide. Disposition of property would be handled within the terms and conditions. One thing that we talked about when we were talking about potential disincorporation of Harupa Valley, sort of a last chance measure for the voters, where disincorporation could be conditioned on the failure of a tax measure. So giving the citizens one last chance to preserve their city. One or more successor agencies would be named. There's one successor's named to wind up the affairs of the city. I've always said it's analogous to the executor of an estate. Just winding up all those financial affairs, but successors can also be named to continue the services that are provided by the city. Another, something that was silent in legislation or in the statutes before that was included in the new legislation that was just effective this year had to do with land use. There was never anything said about what land use would be in effect post-incorporation. So it is specified now that the general plan and zoning designations that have been approved by the city would remain in place until some new action was taken by the Board of Supervisors. Any conditional use permits or legal non-conforming uses that were in place upon the effective date would also continue to have that same status. Again, I'll repeat, disincorporation alone cannot eliminate or restructure debt in any manner. Pension obligations have to be taken care of. Those don't go away. And for any agency that's a PERS member, that would require coordination with PERS. I believe there is a maximum required payback period for those pension obligations. because disincorporation is considered a termination of the PERS contract, and so those termination provisions that require payback would come into effect. Regarding timing, a disincorporation would, I would say, under the most favorable circumstances from the time we received a complete application, could possibly take somewhat less than a year, depending again on the complexity, could possibly take 2 years from beginning to end, by end I say a vote. Alternatives, as I mentioned, anything that's debt related, it's possible that bankruptcy is a better alternative to look into as opposed to disincorporation. And in fact, it's been suggested that bankruptcy could even be used in conjunction with disincorporation to perhaps reduce the burden on those remaining assets. A functional consolidation that's been suggested before with another city, rather than an actual consolidation, it's most likely that there would be a disincorporation and annexation of territory to another city, an adjacent city. That would likely require other actions on the part of LAFCO, municipal service reviews, sphere amendments, and so forth. The bottom line is, I think the way that we've always, and when I say we, I think the LAFCO community, I was involved somewhat in that new legislation, but that disincorporation should always be the last resort pursued after looking into all other available options. I mean, there is, in this case, this was certainly the case in Karupa Valley as the most recently incorporated city. I think folks here probably know that just the effort involved on the part of the community to pursue incorporation is a big one. It's hard, it can't be dismissed. So clearly when you're looking at disincorporation, that's something to keep in mind, that effort that went into incorporation, pursuing that independence. And so that's what we see it as something to be looked at only after all other avenues have been pursued. Any questions?
Yes.
I'll just do 2 at a time and then we'll pass on.
And I'll put in my disclaimer first. Seeing as how there hasn't been a disincorporation since the 70s, there are no experts.
Right.
So I'll do my best to answer questions,
Well,
but
you've touched on most of them.
okay.
Cabazon, the reason you said was mostly political instability. My understanding when I had researched it was that their numbers, their population numbers had dropped so much that it made it, or was that Vernon, when you said legislative?
Oh, Vernon Vernon is an incredibly small city.
Right.
One of the smallest, if not the smallest,
Right.
in California.
Yeah, but I think it was Cabazon that had dropped so low that it was looked at, that the population numbers.
Cabazon never had a high population. I don't know, I don't recall that. There could have been some population decline. There was population decline among the council.
Yes, often.
But there was a lot of political instability, and a lot of it revolved around gambling.
Right.
They approved gambling measures, and that brought a whole new set of issues to the city that were difficult to deal with.
Okay. And my next question, and I'll pass it on. It does not, this process you've reinforced over and over does not erase any debts that the city may have. Does it, however, increase? I mean, there's a cost to this, right? There's a cost to this process for the election and for putting it out there. I mean,
Yeah, I'd say the LAFCO fee would probably be fairly minimal in relationship to other things. I can't even remember what our, I think both incorporation and disincorporation are the only two types of proposals we have where it's based on time and materials. Because each one could be so different. We would probably ask for a $5,000 deposit upfront cost. It would be a best guess, obviously, since we've never done one.
Right.
But I would estimate that costs would probably range between $5,000 and $15,000 for the LAFCO processing end of it. Probably what would be more expensive would be for the preparation of the comprehensive fiscal analysis.
Right, because that has to be done outside.
Correct.
In both ways. Okay, and those costs stay with the city that is attempting this?
Well, or whoever the proponent is.
Right.
If the city is the applicant, if it's submitted by petition, whoever that, just as there was an incorporation committee, there could be a disincorporation committee, and then it would be their responsibility to shoulder those costs.
Okay. All right, well, that's it for now. I'll pass it on.
Okay.
I have more after.
Okay, well, you just brought up a question. Before my questions, you said that if there, well, let me first ask the question. You said resolution could be done by the city, the county, or a petition, and the petition would require 25% of the people on the petition.
Yes.
The petition would then go to a vote of the people.
The petition just initiates the process. So it can be initiated either by a public agency or by a petition of registered voters. It doesn't matter how it's initiated, the rest of the process is still the same. If LAFCO approves it, it still winds up going to the electorate to vote.
Okay, so the people who petitioned it would provide it to LAFCO. They would be required to carry the burden of the cost. And then if LAFCO approved it, it would then go to a vote of the people. And you said that, where is it? You said that then it was a simple majority. However, under some conditions, it could require a 2/3 vote. What are some of those conditions?
Well, terms and conditions placed by LAFCO on the approval. So if LAFCO, say, conditioned disincorporation on passage of a special tax to take care of a city's debt obligations, that tax measure would appear as a separate item on the ballot, and since it would be a special tax, it would require a 2/3 vote. And if that didn't pass, then the disincorporation could not become effective regardless of what the vote was on the disincorporation.
Okay.
And I do want to clarify something because you remind me of something. I said that whoever the applicant was responsible for all costs. Well, actually, there is one cost that that an agency would be responsible for, and that is the election cost.
Yeah. But the petition to LAFCO, the fee between $5,000 and $15,000 would be a responsibility of the petitioners.
Or whatever agency.
Well, whoever
Yeah, whoever
petitioned.
is the applicant, yeah.
Okay. Okay, then you talked about the transfer of all taxes, and that a tax possibly could be required to cover any debt. And I think we talked about that. If that debt would have to go to a vote by the people, and that would require 2/3. What if it's not passed, then disincorporation just goes away?
Correct.
Okay. And one other question. You said the timing of the application would probably be just less than a year, but it could be up to 2 years depending on the complexity. All right, would the complexity, let's say the city disincorporated and negotiated to become a part of another city, would that be considered a complexity?
That would, yes, that would
In other words,
definitely
if
increase
the
the
city
complexity
just
of the proposal.
disincorporated and county took over, that would be probably under a year. If it was determined that the city wanted to become part of another city or district or whatever, then it could take up to 2 years.
I would not say those are necessarily the only factors that would go into
But
it.
yeah, but that's one of them.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely adding another entity into it would make for a more complex proposal. There'd be additional analyses required. And if you're talking about large annexation and it would also require a sphere of influence amendment to that other city, which would then require something called a municipal service review. So it definitely does add more work, more time into it.
Okay, I'm through.
Sorry, just a comment. I really don't want to put you on the spot. It sounds like the terms and conditions of disincorporation are aimed at not disincorporating. It sounds like it's very difficult. I'm not asking for your personal opinion, but from what I'm hearing from you, is that you're suggesting disincorporation is not the thing, not the avenue to travel on.
Well, you said it was
I will
the last
answer.
resort.
Hmm?
You said it was the last resort.
Yeah, and I'll stick with that. But also, that list I read is only a partial list of possible terms and conditions that the commission could place on a proposal. Most of the proposals that come to LAFCO, to the annexation proposals to cities or special districts, have some types of terms and conditions. Some of them are pretty mundane. Others are a little more complicated. But yeah, those are possible types of terms and conditions that could be placed on a disincorporation.
Thank you.
Excuse me, George. You talked about the fact that it could take 10 to 12 months to a year and then go to an election. When can the election take place? Is that going to be a midterm? Can it be any time? Or is that to be at a general? Or when elections for this, when do they take place?
It can be, I believe, at any regular election date. I don't believe it has to be at a a statewide election or anything like that. I think as long as it is at a regular election date, regularly established election date.
But the tax may constrain, the tax
That's-
or other funding mechanism may change that.
Yes, depending on what type of tax, and you know better than I.
General
Certain is
versus
it general
special.
general taxes that require?
Council election, yes.
Okay. But it's unlikely that any. I think it's less likely that a tax that would be a term and condition would be a general tax.
Agreed.
I guess that gives me a real mind-boggling thing when we talk about that, in that subject of general and special, and 2/3. It seems like if we say that a tax is for the benefit of the city, it's a general tax. If it's for a specific purpose, it could be a special tax.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we say that there is a debt or a tax that's out there, if you're going to disincorporate, and that would go on, let's say, as you said, it could be voted on, why would that not be a general tax? It's just something, even though if it was for a special purpose.
Well, I think if it's for a special purpose, it's a special tax. If it's to say specifically to pay off obligations. And I'll also tell you, this seems to be the consensus of the discussions that I've heard since in the development and since the passage of the new statutes, of the revised statutes. I have not sought a specific legal opinion, but it certainly makes sense to me that if it's required for a specific purpose, and I believe the retirement of obligations of a city would be considered a specific purpose. Maybe I'm trying to think. The wheels were turning. I could hear them. But if a city had an existing general tax that,
Sounds better.
yes, that's what I was thinking. If that was scheduled to go away on a certain date and the commission required continuation of that may only be subject to a majority vote in that case, potentially.
As with the sales tax or transaction and use tax.
Right.
Yes,
So it really would depend on the circumstances at the time.
yeah.
Tax and tax. Anybody else before I take my next?
Go ahead.
You mentioned property tax, that there would be an analysis. Does that mean that our property taxes could be raised?
No,
Okay, so what we have now would stay no matter what, even if we are annexed?
yes, the property tax rate does not increase. That's,
Okay, so it
that's set.
stay the way it is?
Yeah,
Okay.
what we're talking about is a reallocation of the existing property taxes.
Okay. And, I can't remember. So you did state that we could, or we or any other city, Cabazon or Vernon or anybody who's done this, could go through all of this, and then if that tax doesn't pass, if the voters don't pass it, then we've wasted all that time and effort and the money for the election and so forth.
I don't know that I would use the term wasted. I mean, anything that's submitted to the voters,
Right.
the idea is to see what the voters want to do. So I wouldn't consider it a waste necessarily, but yes, I mean, after any kind of campaign, disincorporation, incorporation, any election, certainly if something doesn't pass, a lot of resources have gone into it that did not result in the hoped for
Right.
outcome.
And the other thing that you said, that the people who acted as executors, basically, of the, they incur they get paid for that?
No, because
Okay.
well, any costs any administrative costs incurred in winding up the affairs, all the money, or any assets of the disincorporated city that are sold, any monies in the city's treasury, they all go to the county in a special fund that is to be set up by the county. And then any administrative expenses that are incurred in the settling of debts or winding up the affairs, they do get charged out of that special fund.
Okay.
But it's not like, there's 10% off the top that goes to the successor agency.
So,
Okay. Hang on just a second, because I just want to say one more thing in case I don't get a chance. I appreciate this. We've heard it before. You just reiterated everything that had been said before. 851, I'm sorry, has changed some things. I appreciate that. But I did want to just reassure the public that the reason you're here is just for information. We're not considering this as an option. It's just information. All right, thank you.
now, a question about what you just commented on, that the assets of the city would go to the county and they would be held in an escrow account, if you will, and any cost would come from that in the processing of the disincorporation?
No. This is after, if disincorporation was successful, upon the effective date, those funds transfer to the county into that special fund. Nothing happens until it is actually approved by the voters and on whatever effective date is established by Lafayette.
Otherwise, it would go back to the city.
Yeah, it doesn't go back and just never transfers unless the disincorporation occurs.
Okay, now, should the disincorporation occur and the city become a part of another city, would those assets then from the county be given to that city?
Most likely, yes, the city would be named, we're assuming it's one action here.
Yeah.
The city would be named successor. They'd probably be taking over all services, I assume. That's the easiest thing to talk about, at least.
Yeah.
And in that case, then everything would go to the city, to that new
Once
city.
our debt was paid, because that would be part of the disincorporation, would be our paying any debt service we have before the finalization.
Yeah, if there's outstanding debt, and it may depend on the nature of the debt. If there's bonded indebtedness.
I'm talking about the only debt we have is PERS. So
Oh, okay.
it would strictly be PERS.
Yeah, that would require coordination with PERS during the process to see what the options were to pay that obligation off.
George, can I ask a question? May I ask a question? Does the county get a share? Does the county get a share of the additional property tax above and beyond what might go to, or as a piece of what otherwise would go to city to which a city was annexed? In other words, does the county get something out of this, as they often do? No offense.
Okay, I want to make sure I understand. So if it was a reorganization that included disincorporation
Yes.
and annexation of that same territory to another city?
Yes, and they're splitting up the tax proceeds. Would they be split pro rata by tax rate area, or would all of the taxes of the annexed area go to the new city?
Well, it's whatever portion, again, the way it's written, it's intended that the property taxes follow the services that they fund. So if all those services are being transferred to a new city, it would then get 100% of the taxes that the city is currently receiving.
So there's going to be like a revenue tax code section 99 memorandum?
Well, it was actually taken out of RNT 99 because that made absolutely no sense. And it's done more like an incorporation.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, can I ask another question that just got passed to me? What would happen to the vehicle license fee revenue? Yes,
Okay, if it was a straight disincorporation, boy, I'm trying hard not to just make something up completely here. But it's a, yeah, if it's a straight disincorporation, I mean, the vehicle license fee revenue that the county receives is different. It's a different pot, calculated differently. So we're sort of talking apples and oranges. It would not be a transfer. That would just kind of go away. If it goes to an annexing city, then it's treated as an annexation. And as you probably know, that's not real good right now. Unless, let's see, actually the Roth, oh my gosh, I cannot remember now if the current Roth bill addresses annexations or it's only the 4 new cities. If it does not, or if it doesn't pass anyway, currently when a city annexes territory, the property tax in lieu of VLF is really only realized for essentially new assessed value that's added after the annexation.
So they basically get to keep the base before annexation.
Let's see if I'm.
It's okay.
No, it would be like any other annex. Ignore the disincorporation. It would be like any other inhabited, developed annexation. It is not a fiscally good thing under current law because you don't get credit for what's on the ground now. Only increases that occur after.
And what about gas tax?
Oh, just fuel taxes?
Right.
I am not that familiar with how those are computed.
Allocated based on population.
Yeah,
Some-
and it's,
I think there's like 3 different sections of.
The gas tax itself, or not the sales tax, but the gas tax is based on population. So whoever got the citizens would get the gas tax.
Okay. The counties is calculated under a different,
A little different.
yeah, I think theirs is under a different section as well.
Thank you, sorry. It wasn't.
All right. Yeah, I think the questions now seem to be getting increasingly more difficult.
It happens as you go along,
Just to be clear, so the VLF goes away,
probably. It sounds like it does to what you said.
and how much are we looking at VLF taxes right now we're collecting?
About 900,000.
950,000.
It's around 900.
Wow.
I think there's a question about the private roads and the gas tax too, I'm not sure.
Well, we only spend it on roads.
So just to be clear, Menifee doesn't get that 950,000 if we merge with Menifee.
It's like what happened to Eastville and River Valley and Montana when they annexed that new area. They didn't get
so the tax
Yeah,
would
Fontana would be
cease,
the most,
the people
analogous.
would no longer have that tax. The tax would,
The property taxes in lieu of VLF
kind of a complicated formula, but probably not under current law. It would just get allocated to all the other cities.
So money allocated us from RCTC transportation would follow us to wherever and measure.
Measure A, or is that what you're talking?
Follow, yes, would follow the city to whoever absorbed us. But the tax that we have, the UUT tax that we have, which is 900-something thousand, would not go with us, ergo it would stop, that people would not have to pay it any longer.
That, well, that could be a term and condition of LAFCO, probably one way or the other.
You'd have to pay it, state law to pay it, you just would have it reallocated. I don't think LAFCO can have a term and condition not to pay your cash tax or your.
Well, now we're talking about
But-
two different things.
I'm talking about the UUT tax.
Yes,
Yeah, that'd be, have to be a LAFCO term and condition.
Yeah.
Exactly as we talked about in general tax extension.
or it could just go away with the disincorporation.
No, it would go away with the sunset.
Back to tax issues. I think right now, just, I'm sure you know, that, we're talking probably, we're looking at annexation as the primary possibility
We're not
here.
looking at that, we're looking at limiting intervention, we're not looking at it.
Well, I'm looking at annexation as the possibility here. And for instance, in Menifee, the property tax is approximately 1/10 of 1% higher than we're currently charging, which would equate to about the same amount of money. Now, that 1/10 of 1% does not follow into annexation, even though their property tax rate is higher.
It doesn't matter what their rate is. Their rate was determined, we're talking about the general property tax rate, was determined by a formula that looked at the cost of services that were transferred from the county to the new city. Oh, now, with an annexation, let's see, we're talking about a couple different things here.
It's not going to change.
Yeah. It's could be whatever the city was getting.
Taxes are set by tax rate area. Looks like a pie chart. I mean, and Terry could tell you this better than I can. And Canyon Lake has its tax rate area, and Menifee has theirs, and incorporated areas have theirs. And it would be an extremely unusual change that, in my opinion, would take special legislation to change those. But Terry, you really should comment on that, because you know far more than I.
Yeah, the property tax rate was set when we first incorporated, like George said, by formula, same with Menifee. And so, would we get Menifee's new rate, or would it still?
No, it would not be Menifee's new rate. It would just be,
Okay.
whatever is going, assuming it's 100% transfer, they inherit those TRAs with the exact same allocation that exists within those TRAs.
Menifee being the example here.
Right,
Because the same would be true of the county, or like Elsinore, or City X.
right.
So
So you're saying that our property taxes would not increase should the city that annexed us
No.
have a higher tax rate?
Correct.
George, you talked about the vote, and we've talked at some time in the past, and it depends on whether Elsinore, any city or whatever, assumes us in this annexation. Is there a voting process for that city that is the successor city to approve or disapprove it, depending on the type of annexation or process you go through?
Yeah, I believe if it was process, yeah, they're getting harder and harder. Are these worth more points? If it was a true consolidation, it from what I recall, it requires passage in both of the affected cities. I think it's unlikely that it would be processed as a consolidation for a number of reasons, more likely as a disincorporation and annexation, with the disincorporation annexation, use the election requirements for each of those essentially, but the bottom line is, no, Menifee would not vote unless the only way that another city would vote would be if an annexation included more than 50% of the population. Is it population or registered voters? I can't remember now, but that's not going to be the case.
But there would be,
How
Was that?
Consolidation forms a new city, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is another, that would be a big issue because, yeah, consolidation.
how would it be determined, for example, say, part of the city council felt that it should be one city and part of the city council felt it should be another city. How would it be determined which city would actually be approached for the annex? The city council would vote on that?
Now, if it's an annexation, if it's a disincorporation and annexation, that annexing city, that council remains intact. There may be, if it's a,
No,
if they vote. Oh.
I'm asking how it would be determined by us as to whether we went to Lake Elsinore or we went to Menifee.
Oh, however the application comes in, whoever the applicant is, that's the proposal they're making to LAFCO.
So if it was an application by the city,
Mhm.
it would be determined by a majority of the city council, which city?
Not our city council.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
but for an annexation, the annexing city would require a plan of services from that city, so they would have to be part of that.
Yes, yes.
but on the legislative end, the city council, for instance, Menifee, goes in districts. And my research indicated that if a city was going to be annexed into Menifee or any other city, that there would require a vote of those people to decide how they're going to handle the incoming population.
I don't know how the redistricting process would work or what the timing would be on that.
Right.
But I do, 'cause I just did it. What would happen would be that once there was an annexation, the population would be imbalanced. And under a specific section of the elections code, you would have to rebalance in time for the next election using the criteria under the federal and California Voting Rights Act. So it would be, you would either have 5 bigger districts drawn to include annexed area, and this is true of any annexed area. And we're using this as an example. If you annex enough that it imbalances, you have to redraw before the next election, or you basically have voting rights problems.
And it's within a certain percentage.
The criteria have to be met for equal populations within a 10% variable.
10%, okay.
But
And-
less is better.
And the timing is by the next election?
By the next, yes, election.
And would we be, when Sun City was annexed to Menifee, it became a district. I don't know if you call it annexed. They became a district of the city of Menifee. Would we be a district, or would we have a choice, or?
Well, Menifee, wow, no, I can't remember if they voted to go by district with the initial incorporation election or if that was a subsequent action. Yeah, I mean, Sun City was not annexed. Sun City was part of the original Menifee incorporation.
Oh.
But the redistricting would be approved by that annexing city's city council.
You gotta go through the council first.
Oh, I thought you got
Sun City has some planning rights granted to them under Menifee's charter.
I don't believe they have a charter.
Menifee's not a charter city, and no, they don't. I incorporated Menifee, and the answer is no.
They have no special rights.
They'd like to, but they don't. I believe they have preserved an advisory council that makes advisory information, and they constitute close to a district that gives them close to a seat on the council. And I think that's the one Greg August represents.
So it's just one council seat is all they,
Well, when the boundaries are drawn, there is a series of on districts, there is a series of criteria you have to meet. And one of them is sense of community, maintaining roads, that kind of thing. I don't believe on the maps that the core, which is, they generally call Sun City now, is all of its district, but it constitutes much of one district because of a community of interest and a balanced population.
Yeah, so all they have that's officially representing them is advisory, Sun City Advisory Council.
Yes, not that that makes them happy, let me make that clear, but yes.
Is there any examples, or have there been any annexations where cities have maintained some sort of property rights?
I'm not sure what you mean by property rights, but when an area is annexed to the city, they are subject to whatever ordinances and other planning documents.
For instance, in where I came from, Bellevue, Washington, they annexed part of the community, and part of the provisions of the annexation was that they maintained their own planning within that area, that was done separately by that community within the town. And I was wondering,
Like an area planning council kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's no provision for that. And actually LAFCO is specific, well, they have fairly wide latitude in terms and conditions. They are specifically prohibited from applying any terms and conditions which directly regulate land use.
Okay.
Page before you.
I didn't say that.
I did. How would the homeowners association be affected, if at all, since it is an incorporated homeowners association?
No
As
effect,
the gated
same as,
community, it would not
same
be
as when the city incorporated separate entities.
And I'll just piggyback onto that. That was my question, Don, just for the edification of the people. That the successor agency, whether it's a county, Lake Elsinore, or Menifee, they took over the area. That would not open the gates to the private community. The private community would remain and will always remain. No city can make that an open gated area, so it has no effect on the private community.
Yeah, absolutely correct.
I wanted to apologize. I thought the meeting started at 6:30 rather than 6, so I apologize for being late.
No problem.
Questions from, any additional questions from the council? Community? Go ahead.
Hi, George.
He looks kind of familiar.
I am.
You have to come up to the.
I worked with this guy when we put the city together. It was easier to put it together and tear it apart. The one question that we were
No,
talking.
you've got to come up here, Jack, sorry.
One of the things that I would be concerned about, and you're talking about what city would take us over with reference to, the thing that might be affected would be the fact that Elsinore had us in the sphere of influence, as George knows, prior to us becoming a city. Now, I don't know whether that would fall into a category where they say, no, wait a minute, we've had this in the sphere of influence, and you took it away from us, we want it back. And I don't know whether that would happen or not.
Well, I'm digging really deep here, Jack, but I believe at the end of the process, by the time the incorporation went to hearing, I think the city actually sent a letter in support of incorporation.
Well, the reason we did that is because we traded with them.
Okay.
We traded the property up there, and we got the BLM property.
But I don't think that would come into it specifically in that history. But any proposal that comes to LAFCO, affected agencies are welcome to comment, and the commission may or may not take those comments into consideration.
I'm sorry, one comment. I'm not sure that, and I'm speaking again theoretically because we're using Canyon Lake as the example, given the outcome in the Bolanos case, I am not sure the response regarding the gates is completely accurate under the application of the public trust doctrine. I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it isn't. I think the issue is a little different.
It-
I don't believe it would lie with LAFCO, but I believe there would be an issue.
What is that a recent case?
No, it was a case that was brought by a group of people who entered the city through Cabian Park, asserting the public trust doctrine over the lake, which has, it doesn't necessarily remove the gates, but it would remove the private nature of the lake. And the outcome was dependent on the physical boundaries of the city aligning with that of the POA. I'm grossly oversimplifying a summary judgment. I'm just saying
Okay.
the answer could be slightly different here because of specific facts,
Okay.
but not as to LAFCO.
George, just one last one, maybe. That you talked about the person, the applicant, in that I think an answer to Dawn's question as to Menifee, Lake Elsinore, that we could decide, but wouldn't those cities have to be an applicant also to do that? And they can't be decided by LAFCO if they didn't want to do that. So aren't they an applicant? And both of them would bid on what they want to do?
That would probably be the preference, a joint application. It's not a requirement as long as they are in agreement and a participant in the process, in particular plan of services. And I was thinking of another part of this, and I am going to look at something here. Just want to see how something's written, because if it's an annexation, I'm kind of wondering now whether that effect of, let's see. Okay. Okay. I believe, and I'd be more than willing to entertain a contrary opinion from council on this, but when I was talking before about the effect on existing general plan and zoning designations, and that those would remain in place, that's specifically written into the disincorporation statutes. They use the term county. So it's very possible that for a reorganization that included annexation to another city, that we would require a pre-zoning ordinance from the city. And everyone would know up front again. The idea is still the same in that everyone knows up front what general plan and zoning designations apply. But the way this effect statute is written, there's an assumption, at least here, that I guess talks about the county general plan and so forth, that it's the county taking over.
But if it's a city, then it would have to be the incoming or the outgoing city that would determine that.
Well, if I'm looking at this correctly, and I'm not going to give you 100% certainty on that, it would be like in any other annexation in this regard, in that we would require the city to pre-zone the territory prior to the application being made. And those pre-zoning designations could mirror what the city currently has.
But the annexing city, if I'm following this correctly, the annexing city can change zoning at any time it wants, is that correct?
And so can the county. Yeah, this just provided some certainty where there was absolute silence before. This just says everything stays in place until the county takes a different action.
One more question, maybe two. Do other cities have the ability to initiate the annexation process? As I understood, only the county had standing. But I could be wrong about that.
To initiate,
To say, we want to annex X city, like could Menifee say, we want to annex Wildemar, assuming they have a proximate, which I don't think they are? Or would have to come from Wildemar, in our example. I just got tired of talking about Canyon Lake.
A disincorporation and annexation?
Yes.
I think if it's a reorganization that includes both of those, that they could initiate it. It would require other actions as well, sphere of influence amendment, but I believe that they could initiate it.
Did that happen in Corona? It seems to me that that happened in.
No, there's never been anything, a disincorporation and annexation of other territory.
An attempted annexation to Mexico?
Oh, yes, yes, and yeah, clearly a city can be the applicant to annex any other territory, whether it's inhabited or uninhabited.
Okay, so that the answer is yes.
Yeah, there's another little tweak with this, which I hadn't really thought about that, but I believe they could.
Other questions from the audience? John?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the information. My question deals with, as I understand it, this is the last resort. We don't want to go to disincorporation if we can possibly avoid it. Two questions. Does LAFCO provide some guidance or counseling, or what can the city do to be sure or to try to avoid disincorporation? In other words, our particular problem, I think, is lack of revenue to pay for our current expenses, which are heavily fire and police. But does LAFCO provide the city with some guidance in terms of avoiding this?
No, that's not really a LAFCO role. No, I mean, we would evaluate, if a proposal was made, we would evaluate that. We would look perhaps if there were other options and ask if they had been explored, but certainly not advise a city or a community on specifically how to address financial issues.
Okay.
Oh, did I just cause another question?
Well, I think it just leads me into the second question, which is, and I brought this one up last time, is what can we do from a city standpoint to go ahead and balance? And you're already doing some of that.
We're in the black.
Right. Yeah, that's good news. We're going in the right direction. I saw some of those projections that show that next year's not going to be as positive as this one. So I'm wondering, what can the city do? And here I'm looking at the city manager, Mr. Palmer. Yeah, in terms of the city, I'm looking as a citizen, what can the city do to, come back into balance and actually provide more revenue, so we'll have funds that will go into our reserves. And we've already turned the corner. But again, the projections are not good. So, what is there more that can be done? And it really falls on unfortunately your shoulders, I think, and the rest of us and citizens maybe to help out with that.
Well, there's two options with regards to revenues there. Obviously, sales tax would be of great benefit to the city. However, we don't have that area right now to do that. The only way if you can't raise revenue through sales tax, then it's through a tax like we have now, like with the utility user tax. And if that's a sustainable form of revenue that the citizens would feel to provide the level of service that they want.
Okay, and I think you've hit the button on the head. Is the level of services that the residents need more.
You may want to defer this until we get into the discussion of the budget, which will be more germane.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Could I just make one comment on your question? I would remind you that the projections are based on our current costs for fire and police, and we are working diligently to reduce both of those, which should make that projection look quite different.
Are there any more questions from the council? Any more questions from the audience? Go ahead, sir.
I'll let you go up there. So if it were a disincorporation and then say a Menifee or a Willamar, not Willamar, but like Elsinore were to take over, So we get Measure A's based on sales tax for the people here. So we owe WRCOG about 300,000, which we advanced, or RCTC.
Okay.
If they were to incorporate it, could they take our tax and use that money that we pledged to pay that tax? Could that go with them instead of being paid off?
Say that again?
We got an advance of our Measure A money from RCTC. They take $8,000 a month out of what they send us.
Excuse me, Terry, could you talk in the microphone a little bit more?
Sure.
Thank you.
We got an advance from RCTC, we owe about $340,000. They take the money every month. If we were to go to a Menifee or Lake Elsinore, and that sales tax would go to those cities, the Measure A, could that debt, instead of being paid off, go with that city, and they could assume it and pay that debt off?
Well, the debt doesn't go away, so get one way or another, either as a lump sum or continuing that payment.
So they could.
Yeah, I believe it could. I believe it could be done like that. But I mean, it does transfer. You know, one thing that's interesting, it would be seen, it's still a disincorporation. It's still seen as an obligation. Practically speaking, I'm going to go with the yes, it could probably be handled like that.
Just to make sure I'm clear on what we're talking about here, Measure A monies that followed us could be used to offset our obligation, continue to offset our obligations for that fund?
The city, the annexing city would have to approve that, correct?
It's something that should be addressed in the plan of services and the fiscal analysis.
So it'd be part of the negotiations between the annexing and the annexed party.
I think you could probably call it negotiation, but it would be set out in the plan of services, in the fiscal analysis, and I think that's a good way to vet it to make sure everyone's on board with how it would work.
Okay. Other questions? Anybody? Seeing no further questions, thank you very much for coming. You know, we have an ongoing battle here with the budget, so I'm sure we'll be in touch again, and hopefully we'll get resolved on our issues and not have to bug you, but I expect that you'll be getting some phone calls sometime in the near future.
Oh yeah, no problem. Always willing to at least attempt to answer the questions, and I don't think there's anything wrong with gathering that information.
Thank you very much for coming. Next item on the agenda is public comments. Does somebody want to read that, blah, blah, blah?
Any person wishing to address the city council on any matter within the jurisdiction of the city, whether or not it appears on this agenda, is asked to complete a speaker request form available on the back counter. The completed form is to be submitted to the city clerk prior to an individual being heard by the city council. The city council has adopted a time limit of 3 minutes per person. If you're commenting on the agenda item, your comments will be heard at the time of that particular item is scheduled on the agenda. Please note that if you are addressing the city council items not on the agenda, the Brown Act does not allow discussion of such items. Therefore, the city council may only do the following: refer the matter to staff, ask for additional information, or request a report back, or give a very limited factual response.
Do we have any requests to speak?
Nancy Horton?
Nancy Horton, EBMWD. The first thing I want to say is that William Alfred Tremblay passed away recently, and I attended his funeral yesterday at the Riverside National Cemetery. He was our first mayor. After he'd been mayor and served on the city council for years, he went to the POA and worked really, really hard to make our community the great place that it is. There was a beautiful service with full military honors for his family. As I understand it from Jack Walmsley, His family called the city and asked for a representative of the city to come, and nobody knew who he was, so they didn't make any arrangements. The same thing happened at the POA. So Jack called me when he realized he was not going to be able to make it himself since his wife had a doctor's appointment. So I made it my business to go and represent the city without any authorization whatsoever. But I felt attention must be paid. And I've also asked Ariel if we could end tonight's meeting in honor of Mr. Tremblay as our first mayor of incorporation and somebody who worked so very hard night and day to make this a beautiful place. That's not what I came here to say. The Water District reduced the conservation stages from 4A to 3A, kind of like a hurricane going down to a tropical storm. We may now water 3 times a week. There's no odd or even numbers. You are allowed to wash cars if you have a hose with a shutoff valve. There is to be no runoff down the street from your sprinklers. There should be no watering on windy days or rainy days. We are to use a broom to sweep our decks and driveways. The drought is not over. EVMWD has to now self-certify that we have enough water for our customers for a 3-year period, and the state will continually monitor our usage. So conservation measures must continue. The new norm is that we live in a desert climate and we are to be extremely careful with our water. I personally want to congratulate all the people of Canyon Lake. I've driven around my entire division. That includes Tuscany Hills, it includes Canyon Hills, it includes Meadowbrook, and includes Sedco Hills. And there is no question, even when I've been in Temecula, Lake Elsinore, and Menifee, that the residents of Canyon Lake did more to conserve than anybody else. People ripped out lawns, put in artificial turf. They did everything they could to reduce the need for turf, wall-to-wall turf, and for the use of water. So I congratulate everybody in this city. The Water District will never do it, so it's coming just from me. I'm aware of the sacrifices that people made to do that, the money that they spent. Some got rebates, some didn't. But they did a fabulous job, and our community shows on almost every single property that something was done. So I'm very pleased, and I hold a coffee every month, the last Tuesday of the month at the sports stop. If anybody wants to come and talk to me about these things or other things related to water, 10 a.m. at the sports stop, last Tuesday of the month. Thank you.
Just wanted to add to that, that Alfred Bill Tremblay was a guy that I knew. When I first came to Canyon Lake, I bought a piece of property in Canyon Lake on the golf course, probably near where you live. And that was in the early 80s. And about 1985, I bought a townhouse down in Continental Cove, and it was Bill Tremblay's townhouse. And so I got to know Bill Tremblay from the mid 80s and through the 90s and that period of time. And I was at the funeral representing the city of Canyon Lake and the council, and was proud to do so. He was a great man, a very interesting person. He commanded a lot of presence and was a great chief of police in Santa Barbara, as well as working in the city of Los Angeles, and a great person.
Thank you, John. Without objection, we'll end this meeting with our best wishes for the family. Okay, any other requests to speak? Does anybody have anything to say out there? Okay, we're moving on to the consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the city council. I move approval of the consent calendar of the city council meeting minutes of May 4th, 2016 and May 4th, 2016 verbatim.
Is there a second? I'll second that. A motion and a lot of seconds. So. We don't have any financial items, so I'm assuming just Up and down vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? 5-0. Okay. I believe we're moving on to business items now. Item 8.1, consideration of request to return to summary minutes for city council. City manager.
To refer this to the city clerk as regards to record keeping.
In November of last year, the city council authorized the city clerk's department to go to action minutes. But at the June 1st meeting, Mayor Pro Tem Haggerty requested that we return back to summary minutes, which has a little more of the discussion, who spoke, the topics that they spoke on. It's not quite verbatim. Those are really extensive for minutes, but it would provide a summary of who spoke and what they spoke about.
In reading the second minutes, are those verbatim? They seem to be the second set.
Yes, the second set is verbatim. We would do verbatim if it was specifically requested for an item, but in general, we'd just have a summary. I believe the minutes for March were done in summary.
Because the first set of minutes, which were May 4th, and then it was a duplicate set. One was very vague, and the second was very detailed. And when I proposed the change back, I asked that we do more, a little more specific than the vague ones, bullet point with topics, so that it would be easier to reference back in minutes for, just more detail, but I certainly don't think, I'm not requesting verbatim unless it's an issue that's would require it on the advice of our council or something, but I think just more information than.
Right, the set that's in here, that's very, very limited. That is a set of action minutes still.
Yeah. Okay.
And so summary would include more, but not nearly as extensive as the verbatim set that's
Okay.
in there.
Thank you.
John?
Well, when I made the motion for the May 4th meeting minutes and the May 4th verbatim, so knowing that they were specifically that way. I think I take exception to your proposal here where it says budget or fiscal impact. There'll be no fiscal impact if we went to the other. And I don't think that's true. I have done minutes in the past, and that takes a long time. It's going to take somebody time to do that, which we're paying this person, but it's going to take them time to go to do that from doing something else. And so there is an impact to that, and I think if there is a need to go to the verbatim, that can be done, or listening to the tapes, or listening to or watching the video, that we have 3 of those, and I think, I remember back that I made the motion on this because I hate to see all that time wasted by our staff trying to write these things out when we really don't pay that much attention to it. And now that we have 3 other, and at that point we had now 3 other means of finding out what was said. And so I think there is a fiscal impact. While you may not be able to quantify the amount of fiscal impact on staff, and I think we're doing a good job. And we had one instance where we needed more, and I think it's great the way it is.
I just want to clarify, this will be for all, like for instance, the Veterans Committee, say, okay, I am all for going away from the action minutes. I've had so many complaints from the public. I know there's your we has to be just for you over there, because I don't agree with that. We need to have a summary of minutes in there too, so that the public can look at it, so that we can, and having those other things available, that's wonderful. I can listen to them if I need more detail. We can call for verbatim if we need more detail, but we can't have the action minutes anymore. I've had far too many complaints from the public.
Other comments?
May I? I think these minutes are probably more extensive than what we would usually have. I mean, this is quite a document, and I agree that some of it may take more time than we think, but we do need to have them done this way. I don't know if there's any in between, or if we can read shorthand, but I was pleasantly surprised, but realized that there's a lot of work that went into these minutes. But I do believe they're still necessary.
Other comments? I'd just like to say that I would hope minutes, we use some common sense in how we do this. There's obviously a range of what summary means and whether it conveys enough information to satisfy people, but take it too far and waste a lot of time. Voting for common sense, whatever that means. Do we need a motion or anything at this point in time?
Yeah, and I would suggest summary minutes, because that's more extensive than action minutes, but it's far less extensive than verbatim minutes. The verbatim minutes that were included were specifically requested for that item. But other than that, it would just list general details on topics that were discussed and the resolution of those topics. But we would need a motion in a second. We went to action with motion and second, so.
Do I have a motion to return to summary minutes?
I so moved.
It's been moved, seconded?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Any comments, questions, concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 4-1.
Can't say no to.
Okay. Moving on to item 8.2, approval of amendment cafeteria benefit policies with increased California benefit contributions. City Manager.
Based on the discussion last time, council asked for a summary of benefits from similar surrounding cities. Finance Director provided that in your packet there for your discussion.
Okay. We had discussion last week. Do we have continuing discussion now?
Okay,
Or 2 weeks ago?
shall I start?
Go ahead.
Okay. I was quite shocked when I looked at the current contribution is $806.29 per month. It's proposed we increase that to $1,350, which is almost double. It's an increase of almost $600 on top of the $800 that we currently are paying. When I looked at the proposals from other cities, the majority of the cities that are our size or close to our size, there's only one that's really close. The rest of them are more than ours, and they are lower than what we're proposing. So I would propose that we revisit that increase and reduce it to possibly a median of what some of these other cities, for example, Truckee has 16,000 people, and they have apparently 3 plans. Just a single employee is $695 an employee, and 1 dependent is $1064, and employing 2 is $1264, and we're proposing $1350 for the first individual, I believe. So Truckee's an example. Another one is Palos Verdes Estates, which is a far wealthier community than ours. They have a population of about 14,000, and their employees, $1252 is what they are paying. La Palma has almost 16,000, and they're paying $865 for an employee plus 2, $706 for an employee plus 1, and $516 for a single employee. I could go on. I don't know if you all are privy to this information, but based on what these other cities are paying and based on our financial, I would love to be able to be as generous as possible, because it's not that I don't think employees deserve everything they can get. But with our fiscal situation, I just simply think that this is a generosity that we can't afford.
Other comments? I reiterate what I said last week. I'm less concerned about what other public agencies are paying than what industry at large is paying. And as I had said then, the average of cafeteria plans that were available in California, over 100 people last year, was $11.25. So that's my mark. That's what I think the maximum should be. I don't think there's a reason that city employees should get better benefit packages than the average private employer, large company employers. Any other comments?
Yes, as you know, 2 weeks ago, I recommended that this go through, and I had my reasons then, and I probably still have them now, but I certainly would consider somebody taking a look at this again. Apparently, this is what has been suggested. I'm not sure how this started, Eric. Perhaps you can explain why the increase, if you have I shouldn't say if you have a reason, but I certainly would entertain something less than what has been proposed, but as I said 2 weeks ago, I know what our budget is, but this is, I'll use the same expression I believe I used then, this is like spitting in the ocean. This isn't going to put us out of business that quickly. So I would be happy to entertain some further information as to what this cafeteria benefit should be. And evidently, Don, you've done some extensive research, and I compliment you for that. And so I would think that we should take a look at it again.
Other council comments? I believe we have a person who wishes to speak on this. John?
John Guzman, Mr. Mayor, distinguished council members, and our city manager and staff. If we had more money, we'd certainly want to pay, more, as much as we can for the benefits package. And you certainly, everybody there, I'm sure, is working, very hard on their jobs. It's just at this time, I think, with the situation we have with the budget, and we're trying to contain those costs. And again, your help is really sincerely appreciated. And again, it is just a matter of how much money we do have to go ahead and spend. And again, we need to stay focused, I think, on the bottom line. And we have turned the corner, and let's continue to push to even put more money into the reserves. And hopefully we'll provide money for the fire department one of these days. One thing I was going to suggest is perhaps, I understand that part-time employees, if they work over 1,000 hours, they're also, this benefit package is available to them. Oh, it is not. Okay, so it's only for the full-time employees? All right. I'm going to hold off, I think, for the next, the budget question. Well, let me go ahead and say now, and this is maybe addressed to the city manager more than the rest of you. In the past, we have had part-time city employees. I believe we had two full-time employees, and the rest were part-time. You might correct me if I'm wrong. My memory tends to slip sometimes. But we had, I believe Lori Moss was working part-time. She had 38 hours, but you and I both know she worked many hours more than that. She was a wonderful city manager. And I thought at some point in time she was a part-time manager, and then she went to full-time management. That's and very well deserved. It was well deserved. We had a lot of difficult situations at the time.
Jordan or Betsy, you want to take a stab at that question?
It's interesting that she began with a reduced number of hours and got more later. Her duties were managerial.
Yeah, I understand a lot of it falls on the city clerk. There's a lot of work that has to be done, and we need consistency, I think, in some positions. But that's something, perhaps that, another thing is perhaps volunteers. We have a lot of very experienced people in the community that, and even students, maybe interning, and get some interns to come in and do those tasks that can be done by perhaps volunteer contract people. But
Thank you, John. Any other comments from the audience? Okay, any other questions, comments, concerns, anything from the council? Is there anybody that'd like to make a motion on something?
I move that we set aside this consideration until we have further discussion and bring it back at our next meeting. I'm not sure who should be discussing this. Would it be the financial committee? Are you the ones that
Well,
established this?
we took a look at it before it reached the council. And just, I think the consensus on the financial, well, I don't think there was a consensus. I think that there was the finance committee looked at it and made the statement, same statement, 1125's the going rate in private industry. I don't think there was any question on that assertion. I think John and I had a little bit of a difference of opinion on how much it should be. I think that the finance committee agreed with Jordan's perception that based on what we're talking about, it's a drop in the bucket. And, it's a question of how many drops until the bucket's filled. So just basically throwing it in the council's arena for their discussion and what council thinks is the wisest course of action.
Could I propose that this be revisited specifically by, say, a committee of one person from the finance committee? I would like to be on that committee and any other volunteer and discuss it.
Well, I would hope that whatever we're discussing, we can discuss now. We can talk, you can make a motion to make a separate committee, but basically we wanted to throw it in the council's lap for discussion now.
So if we discuss it now, we could just simply amend this consideration.
Yeah, whatever you want it to be.
Pass it.
Pass it, don't pass it, amend it. I told you my bogey, but that's just my opinion. And there's nothing that I have to base that on other than a study on the cafeteria plans for private industry.
Aaron, what is the cost of living standard right now? Do you know?
Do you know what CPI is currently, Terry? Do you know what current CPI is for the area?
At the end of April, it was 2%.
That's what I thought it was.
2%? And I didn't bother to do the math on this, but this has got to be at least 40-some%.
Well, it hasn't been raised in 8 years, so if you went 2% a year, 16%.
Well, Riverside County Public Services and the employees, I believe, just agreed to, some of them hadn't had a raise in a long time, and I think they agreed to a 2% increase for the next 2 years, I think, based on the fact that they're having financial problems. So I think we do not stand in a position to have this kind of generosity, even though we would like to do it. I would recommend significantly less than whatever this percentage is, which I think has got to be.
I would like to say that I think that Kaiser health plans are kind of a guide, and that's what Aaron used, if I remember correctly, to establish the numbers that he was looking at. When I looked at Kaiser health plans, they were not quite as expensive as this, but they were above the 1125. If you use that, because the reality is that cost for medical services has gone up more than inflation. I think you'd agree to that. And so there has been some increased costs in the premiums that are asked for medical care. But as I believe that everybody should have a stake in the game, and that if Kaiser is the premium of the medical insurances, and you can get medical insurance, I believe, for us about 900 under PERS. I think one of the more, for a family of two, I think I saw that someplace, 9 something. So, you know, to have a reasonable stake in the game and 2 people under medical, you know, how much is a reasonable stake? $100 a month? I don't know. You know, then you're looking at still an increase to 900. I would think that I wouldn't want. I was on the base level PERS and it sucked, and so I was not pleased with being on the base level PERS. So my own experience would say that a better plan would be a nice thing to provide. But again, what should the level of contribution be? I think that everybody should have a stake in the game personally.
I don't know what that means. Does that
Stake in the
mean
game?
with more money, they would have a stake in the game? Is that what you mean?
No, I meant that they should have to contribute towards the medical plan to some extent.
Okay. Because I don't have anywhere near $800 coming to me for my medical, for me and my family. I see both sides. That's what I said last time. I see both sides. I don't know how we got here. First of all, I don't know how this got brought in. Do we know?
No, I wish that every time something was put on the table, you knew who authored it. Was this out of your office, Aaron?
Yes, it was. I was looking at, you know, we were losing Kristen and looking at a way to make sure that when we recruit and retain people, that we have a way to keep people here. Looking at also, you know, salaries are lower compared to in the region, and so the benefit increase is less of a burden than obviously a salary increase, because there's other ancillary costs that go up because of that.
Right.
And yes, he's right. I believe the way it is now, you need to have skin in the game, and you're never going to get 100%.
Yeah, Riverside County just went to a higher
So-
contribution as well.
That's why I was looking at all that when I read the numbers by Terry. Terry ran the numbers, and we still came out with the surplus, I believe. What was the increase, Terry, for the year then?
Oh, it's $2,700 per full-time employee. Yeah, the 13.
I know that doesn't seem like much, but when I'm looking to possibly increase our contribution for the TMDL task force that is going to save our $10,000 a month in 2020 if we get our lake under control, that is a lot of money. So I know it's just a drop in the bucket, but how many drops? And can we table this until another couple of months so that we're not looking at the barrel of a gun right now while we're trying to figure out all these other budget issues, and then also, gee, do we have enough money, just because we're in the black, do we have enough money to offer this? I'd love to offer it, but.
Yes, you can table this, and we can work out, and we can pass the budget tonight and not increase the cafeteria plan. Yes.
And then we could talk about it possibly at the next meeting.
Yes.
And there's no contribution currently by employees.
Anything over 806, yes.
Yeah, but they get in their pocket 806 to spend on whatever plan.
That is correct. Yeah, that's correct. But like I said, it doesn't cover it. If they took all the family coverage here,
Right.
then they're spending out of pocket at the Kaiser rate approximately $900 a month out of their pocket.
And that is a lot of money. I think the timing of this may have been off, is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking if we could get through our budget and do that, and then we can discuss it. But I do think the timing is off, and I'm sorry, but we're focusing.
We'll bring it back then. If you want to get a motion table, this we'll bring it back.
Please.
Then the motion stands as I made it.
Is the
That
motion
this be tabled.
tabled? Is there a motion to table? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Well, we've moved and seconded. Any additional comment from the council or the audience? Seeing none, is this a financial issue? Do we have to have a roll call?
To table it, you're not making a plan.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. I don't think if I heard 5 ayes, any other abstains?
I didn't say anything. Yes.
So if you don't hear it, it's a yes.
I don't hear it.
Yeah, it's our call. So it's 5 yeses.
Okay, well, I think we've got enough to table it anyways.
Can we take just a 2-minute break?
Sure. We've got a break request. It's 10 minutes to 8. We'll get back together at 7:55, 5 minutes.
2 hours, something like that.
Yeah, some an hour and a half. Sorry about that. I thought it was 6:30. I'm so used to 6:30.
No, I did not. Ariel did. Probably.
Might try to call my home phone. I don't know the answer to that. Well, you can't stop it if you can't stop
You don't have to.
Well, this option is based on the proposed. I'm saying stating facts. Fire department, JPA option. The options. That would be in the discussion of work for JPA fire station. I don't
City didn't do that at all.
This is a great part of my education.
Oh, you mean it was a manual power?
Yes, this is a manual power.
A green power.
It's a little bit nice.
Although not that
Because
presentation.
you can make it for
Well, it might be recycled. Edible. Bamboo.
You only write on the edge.
This is what I said, create city fire station 60 JPA option.
So they can't have their country.
I'm saying it's gonna be 1.4 million approximately, balanced budget. Now I'm basing it on our revenues. How much money we have. I'm saying that's what the bogey has to be.
There are no reductions in costs according to the projections. There's no distinct possibility on
The budget includes nothing provisionary in there for starting a fire station. It includes simply, no, it does not.
It includes a
It's $1.2 million It's a glaring omission from the budget.
because it says at the very beginning, John, at the very beginning, it is the contract, which is nothing to it. It's on the second page. Which is less than anything else we have.
The point I'm making is that this does not include provisions for funding our own development of our own fire department.
It's on the projections. It's on the projections.
Reality is that here's the budget, it is
What? Can we begin again, please? Next item on the agenda is the adoption of resolution 2016-23, approving the city's fiscal year 2016-17 budget and appropriations limit. Before I begin, I wanted to make a comment, which is there's nothing in this budget I think it needs to be clear that there's nothing in this budget that's allocated for starting our own fire department. And with that said, that, in my opinion, has to be addressed in reviewing this budgeting process. I think that would be a consensus of the Finance Committee, too. Mr. City Manager.
Terry, you want to go over the projection? Additionally, over the budget and the projections that were included in this packet.
I'm not sure what the question is.
Well, the comment was made, and I believe it's accurate. If it's not, please advise, that there have not been included provisions for starting our own fire department in this budget, that the budget only includes the cost to maintain the current level of services that we're under right now.
That's correct.
Yes, Mayor, you're correct.
And I think that is a glaring, it's the elephant in the room, and it's a glaring omission that has to be discussed.
Terry, can you explain why you decided to do that?
I didn't decide anything. That was direction from the city manager.
I decided to budget it based on what the cost is, and the monies would come out of reserves. We would put monies in reserves if we were to start our own department, and so those monies are still there. And we could just make a budget adjustment.
Because last year and the year before, we adopted a budget knowing it may change, and we came back in mid-year and made those changes, so.
Exactly, thank you, that's what I want to clarify.
Okay, is there any additional presentation above and beyond what was done last week?
Council requested, we have a 5-year projection, and Terry, you want to discuss that with them?
Sure. The first 5-year projection you have, which is on page 102. I'm not sure of the order here. That is if the city fire department the city staffs the fire department with Station 60 open, and it would be effective 16-17, right, Aaron? Is that what we decided?
It says effective July 1st, 16.
Well, that's a wrong, the date down below, the little one there, fiscal year 16-17. Because that would be the first year we could do it. It would be hard to get it done this current fiscal year we're approaching. And so it'd be 2.5 million the first year, 1,756,859, with 5% increases after that. And so you can tell by the first year, we're gonna have a little over $1,114,000 deficit, and then it goes down to 379, 532, 657, and in year 2021, when the UUT runs out, we're negative fund balance.
Terry, I'm sorry. The way I read this and I look at the numbers, your numbers for 16-17 at 5,696,000 is not, it means that you've got an extra $1.2 million into that. So it does mean that it says it's opening on 16-17.
Yes.
You've got the money there for that.
Right. That's when we would, because 15-16, what are we budgeting, 16-17? I guess that would be in there. So I sent over different ones, so maybe these were the ones that weren't changed.
Did you up this 600,000 for the Station 60 to be open? Is that what that increased number for 16, 17 is?
There's additional first-year costs, so it was like, what, $600,000 higher? It was like 2.5 million as opposed to 1.8.
I believe that's what
First year.
the consultant's numbers were.
Right.
First year, if we had our own
It's about
department.
2.5.
Okay. Because the proposals I saw were all around 2.2, 2.3. So I was shocked when I saw what was it? Expenditures 5.7, basically.
Well, that's the total city with the extra 1.8 plus like 600,000 to open our own fire department, so. And it does get up there quickly when you do that, so.
But that also would change if we didn't go in that direction.
Right, so if you went the current way we are now with Station 60 closed, see, because, you know,
We're at 104.
see, I sent over various versions of this, and they didn't copy the last one, or the right ones. If you look at page 108, that has the city fire department with Station 60 open effective July 1st, 2017. And so that would be the correct one. The other one, there's no way we would get Station 60 open with our own staff at 16, 17. So that one, and then that one, we start to go negative 17, 18, and then fund balance goes negative in 20 and 21 as well.
And this is based on the numbers that the consultant provided?
Yes, ma'am.
Before starting our own, which he stated were on the high side.
Yes.
Okay.
And they projected them about a 5% increase on their projections. And so we have one where the county's operating it. And I don't know if they gave you the right one on that one
I think
either.
106 is that.
But yeah, I think I did a second one to move this to the second year as well.
It's a million more.
But right, but you can tell 16, 17, if the current year, if we were to go with the county, we would have a deficit of 480,000. Slowly would grow up to 850, and then in 2021 it'd be 1,560,000, and we'd have a deficit of about 1.2 million. Right. The year UUT is sunset at the end of December of 20, so it's just a half a year UUT. So those two situations, if we open our own fire station, whether we run it or the county runs it, we operate at a deficit for the last 4 years, and then we're at negative fund balance for 2021. So if we go with...
I guess, let me just throw something in real quick. You know, we're talking about 2020 and things, sunset and being able to do things. That what we heard earlier on the disincorporation about debt, and we know that we have a debt of $1.5 million, I believe, with PERS.
I checked on their website last week. I think I sent it to Aaron. Depending on, because what they do is they take our money that we have, they take our debt, and they purchase bonds out there. And depending on the rate they can get, either 2.5 to 4.5, it's like $1 million to $1.5 million. That's what would be the debt.
So if we're looking at what our debt is, then $1 million to $1.5 million would have to come out of the reserves if we did that. So when we take a look at some of these figures and you take a look at $1.8 million or 900,000, we're in the red at that point. If there was a decision to disincorporate, we would in fact be bankrupt at that point.
Yeah, that's the choice you went, sure.
So one of the considerations that you take a look at, in my opinion, when you look at these numbers, is when you look at the bottom line number of fund balance, that you've got to subtract at least $1 million, if not $1.5 million.
At worst case, yes.
Okay, so.
Well, no, not necessarily, and here's why. Number one, you're making the assumption that you use that money to immediately pay off reserves with PERS, which does, and they do provide for a form of payment program. Number two, you're making the assumption that you don't work with PERS to have your debt assumed by, in your example, an annexing city. So while you may be stating the worst case scenario, I don't think that's necessarily a fact. I think it's a variable. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, that's what George said.
Yeah, I don't know what would happen, a city's share, but I doubt anybody in this day and age would assume PERS debt.
And I don't think that's what George said. George says that it's your debt and you have to take care of it.
But PERS does offer a payment plan, so.
He said the plan would be worked out.
Is this fund balance, let me rephrase this. How am I going to ask this? We have great hopes of being able to reduce both our fire and police costs. This does not reflect any reduction in fire or police costs.
You are correct.
Yes, it does. When you take the city one, the city one is based on our cost. When it says city fire department, effective July 2017 is the consultant's amount.
It's less than CAL FIRE, but it's, I think she's talking further reduction.
I'm talking.
We have no other further reductions to talk about. We have two that we consider, either the county fire or what the ECI, whatever, the consultant.
We can also, we have high hopes of being able to decrease significantly our police costs. If we can negotiate a merger with the POA and them contributing at least half of the cost, we will have a significant savings with the fire department. Is that, this projection is with, the police department. Your projection for the police is this absurd thing we're paying right now and the projected increases that they're saying, which is probably going to be reduced significantly. I just want to point that out.
Well, there is no such thing as a reduced police cost.
Well, if we're going to put out numbers that are not substantiated entirely, this is a possibility. What we could be looking at in 5 years, there are other possibilities that we could be looking at in 5 years. What I'd like to do right now is bring it back to, this is a projection, and I thought we were supposed to be addressing the 16-17 budget, not 5 years from now.
You're right.
Okay,
There's
so
no
then
way
can
you
we-
can look at a current budget and not look at what its implications are in the
Absolutely,
future.
we've done it on less than this, and we've done it on budgets.
It's a fool's errand to move in that direction.
That is your opinion, and I appreciate that, but the council is here to vote on the budget, and I would like us to address the 16-17 budget so that we can get that voted on and not move to another meeting.
Well, if you want to bury your head in the sand, feel free.
Okay, thank you. Can we move on then? You were doing a presentation, or?
Well, but basically, I don't see one here where we keep the current situation with Station 60 closed, and that we were positive all the way through, and until the 2021 when we lost half the UUT. But at that point, we were still had fund balance, but we had a deficit, yes.
So 16-17?
Other comments from the council?
It would appear to me that any concern, and here again, we're not talking past 16-17, it would appear to me that certainly by then we will know, God help us if we don't, what our cost for fire would be, and we should have an idea what we can do about the police. And at that time, then we can start looking at the gloom and doom, if that's the direction we're going, and it's a reality. Once we know that there's no possibility of any further reductions, then we have real numbers to look at. Right now, we're projecting on costs that we're hoping to reduce significantly. So I think at this point, just talking about the budget for next year is our immediate concern. Once we get that approved or adjusted or whatever we're going to do, finally approved, then I think in looking forward, we know what we have to do in order to stay alive or to take the next step, which we talked about tonight with the disincorporation. I don't think now is the time to talk about disincorporation. I think now is the time to approve the budget that we have, that based on the numbers you have, is a viable budget for next year.
Yes.
Okay.
Other comments from the council?
Well, I think, Jordan, I agree with you, you know, that, Mr. Mayor, you know, there's some pie in the sky, and we can look forward to things in the future. We can kick cans down the road and continue to kick cans down the road in the possibility of something happening in the future. We have not yet addressed the issue of the fire situation. We'll be talking about that in the next item, I believe, on the agenda. And this is saying we're going to continue to have Station 60 closed. We sit here and give rhetoric to the people. We want Station 60 open. We want paramedics there, but haven't done a damn thing about it.
That's on the next agenda item.
That's not true.
Budget, please.
That this budget is based, I'm sorry if I'm interrupting you, because I had the floor.
John has the floor.
That this budget is predicated on $1,221,000, which is predicated on the fact that the station is closed at this point. And so if we approve the budget and we don't go anywhere with the fire, it's okay, because that's the direction we have. The budget's a spending plan. Our spending plan is to keep the station closed. I don't know how long we can keep fooling the people about the fact that we want to do something and fail to do it and say, hey, in 2 or 3 years.
Point of
just
order,
give
this
us
is not a
time to do
discussion
it.
on the budget, this is a discussion on the fire
John
issue. I
has
would
the
like
floor.
to table it.
I rule in favor
I'm
of
asking for a
John.
point of order on this.
I ruled in favor of John.
So I think we need to take a look. If we want to be responsible as city council people, I think we need to take a look at everything that we've got and make these decisions.
We can't make them until we know more. I'm asking for time.
You know what this says what the consultants say that would cost. The consultants told you that no matter what you pick, unless you address the issue of the UUT, you're going to go broke. They said that. You refuse to accept that, but that's in their document.
But that's based on projections that could be reduced, and until we know if they're going to be reduced or not, I don't think we should be making a decision on doing any serious thing about the city, which is off topic, by the way. We're talking about the budget. The budget is based on numbers that are based on what we are assuming will be moving forward down the road. All we need to talk about is the 16-17 budget, which
Okay,
we are not going into a hole. And
Mr. Mayor.
meanwhile, we will know whether we will be able to move forward or not.
Jordan.
What I'm hearing is two different things here tonight. We're here to approve this budget, excuse me, and I think this is something that we need to address and do that now. We're also talking about perhaps giving people false hope. I don't know if that's true or not. I hope that it isn't, but I think we owe it to our city manager, who's been working very hard on negotiating with the fire department. He may have some information for us that we're going to appreciate hearing, I hope. Not to put you on the spot, Mr. Palmer, but I know you told me that you have some things that you've been working on, hopefully will be beneficial. I think we need to get this budget done, and if we all had crystal balls, we wouldn't, we wouldn't be having this problem right now. But it's one thing at a time. Yes, we're not in really good shape, but perhaps that's going to change. We need to find that out and give it a chance. Let's get, if it's kicking this budget down the road or kicking the can down the road, then maybe we can do that for a while. And the UUT tax, I think everybody's pretty well aware of the fact that that's probably going to have to continue, but we don't know that right now. So why don't we address what we have before us at this time and then talk about the rest of this?
Can we, at this point, you've provided the information that we wanted from the last meeting. Can we now call for the vote on this item?
No, there's no motion on the floor.
Oh, do we have, okay, then I will make a motion that we approve the budget as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion.
Okay.
John Guzman.
Mr. Mayor, distinguished council members and city staff. I've taken a look at the budget, gone through the numbers, and I'm actually of the opinion that this really should reflect what we really want to do this year. It should be our closest estimate at what we're looking at. I think there's structural changes that are needed in the fire department and the police department. That's almost obvious. I mean, that's 70, 80%, 75% of our budget. The city manager's area is the other, probably the third one in line. And I guess I really would ask that the city manager and the staff kind of look a little bit harder at the costs. And I would love to see the city continue. I mean, to me, that's really important. I don't want to be part of the county. I don't want to be a part of another city. I kind of enjoy talking to the fine council people we have, and you're all doing a fantastic job. Thank you for all you do. And the city staff as well. That everybody's working hard. But what we want to do is we want to save the city staff. You know, let's keep you employed. If we go to the county, we have to get taken over, we're going to lose that. So it behooves all of us, I think, to take another look at this budget and kind of cut back a little bit more. And there's some areas here that aren't cutting back, you know, they're actually increasing. And they aren't big amounts, but you know, maybe we should be holding to what we've done in the past. You know, travel, I see travel, and by the way, I mean $300 for the time that all you all spend. I mean, the citizens are getting a real bargain here.
We're volunteers.
You are volunteers, yes. And
Have to do that when people elect us.
yeah, but thank you very much. I mean, we do appreciate it. But I guess my point being, if you kind of go back through the budget and some of these items, if you kind of cut back on those, you know, I suggested perhaps in the city staff that we might have interns or volunteers or somebody to help, you know, offload some of the work that the current staff has to do. You know, there's programs that allow for them to come and help us out. You know, again, I've been through the budget, and I don't know if it's, you know, I agree with Councilmember Aaron Krantz that, you know, the budget, we're going to have to approve it. It's in the works. But maybe now is the time to focus on these numbers and do, you know, cut what you can. And, you know, I want the city to continue, and I'm sure all of you do as well. So I think that's my time. Thank you.
Quick comment, you know, that cuts are a drop in the bucket if we don't get fire and police resolved.
Yes.
They're going to be irrelevant.
Yes, I agree.
Are there any other comments?
I have a question for Terry. I noticed on the fire that the utilities for 13, 14, 14, 15, $9,000 for utilities on an empty building. I just don't get that.
That's just what the bills are running. I'm not sure why. We could go take a look and see why.
Yeah, I think last time you said that you were in
We're in the process of auditing
Okay.
the building there. I've noticed some things in the bills that I'm questioning, and we're trying to figure out what's going on there. Once we have a clearer picture, we'll report back.
Okay.
Question on the cafeteria plan that's included in the budget. That was based on the recommended plan, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And so how would it be handled on the budget? Would it be done as a modification to the budget, or would we wait till mid-year, or how?
I would leave it in, kind of a built-in cushion.
I have another question. On page 85, animal control, you showed that our debt service was 51,000, then 57, then 62, and now 63.7. Is that a debt? What our obligation is for the new building they built, and if so, will that debt ultimately end, and if so, when?
It's
Or is
like,
that our contribution to?
It's a 30, I think it's a 30-year bond, and we're like 6 or 7 years into it, so there's,
Why is it increasing every year then?
because it's the set payment, but it's based on a formula as how many animals, so it changes every year.
There's a base and then there's. the
So you're
number.
saying this is a 20-year projection or
Well,
whatever?
it's a 30-year bond, and I think we're 6 or 7 years into it, so there's probably 23 years left, so.
And is that cost appropriated according to the number of people in the city or the number of animals?
Based on the number of animals.
Wow. Okay.
And we get this number from them, that they provide, the Southwest Financing Authority provides this number too, so. And there are some admin costs in there, and those go up. They have an audit, and there's other costs they pass on to us, so that's why it's a little different.
Then I have a question on professional specialized services, which is on the Public Works Administration. It was 5, then it was 4, then it was 12. Now you projected for 16, 17, 40,000.
In the past, we had Tri-Lakes doing it. They weren't doing a lot. And this is the estimate we got from our new Charles Abbott and Associates. It was their best guess based on what they did the last couple months of this fiscal year.
Has anybody vetted their prices to see if they're, I know they can.
We did a whole bid process and went through them and interviewed 3 different firms, I think. And so, yes, I mean, it was.
Because that seemed a little high to me.
Yeah.
For a city of our size and the planning required, isn't that?
This is just public work, so not planning. This is just out there.
Oh, public
Public
works.
works.
Right, so right now, they're doing a lot of project management. They're taking care of Railroad Canyon, the medians. We've had a sound wall issue that needs to be repaired. We've had a culvert up on Greenhorn that's got to be repaired. They're working on those issues. And so since they're, like I said, Tri-Lakes didn't seem to do a lot, Charles Abbott came in, identified some areas. We've been working on those. So hopefully, after having a year of seeing where things are, we'll be able to stabilize how much we're going to need them for public works.
And hopefully that'll be reduced.
What's that? I'm sorry?
Hopefully it'll be reduced.
Well, hopefully, yes.
Yeah, because that seems pretty high to me. Okay.
Other questions from council?
Yeah, I
Go
got
for it.
more.
Go for it.
Under special enforcement, the lake patrol, we have lake patrol additionally to the marine patrol that the POA has, is that correct?
Yes.
That we have one boat,
We have 2 boats, don't we? 2 boats.
2 boats. They're not on the water at the same time though, aren't they? I think they alternate boats.
Yeah, only on the 4th of July.
Yeah. Okay. Because it was $5,500, which, if it's just for the 4th of July, seemed a little high. Also, on building and facilities maintenance, professional specialized services, $20,000. Now, I presume that's consulting. I think it lists
What
consulting.
page are you on?
93. Oh, I
Right,
see.
that's-
That's
it's-
pest control.
It's a number of items. It's
Oh,
got
yeah, it's a lot of
cleaning
items.
for
Okay.
11,000. It's
Yeah.
got pest control.
I
It's
forgot.
got the elevator service for $4,400.
Okay.
And then the roof maintenance, sprinkler maintenance, stuff like that. And then security, ADT security.
And do we own the police cars?
We used to. We sold them back to.
We pay a per mile charge.
Yeah,
So we pay for maintenance and fuel?
yes.
Basically, yes.
Okay, because
On the per mile charge.
Yeah, it's part of the per mile charge. I believe it's like 94 cents a mile is what we pay.
Okay, because I thought there were 2 items listed, and I thought we were paying a per mile charge, but I thought I saw fuel, but I don't know where that is right now. But the gas tax, operations and maintenance, $265,000 from $193,000.
That, again, is additional work requested by Charles Abbott and based on what they've been doing. And that's all payable from the restricted gas tax funds, which we have plenty of that, so,
That's what we use for.
yeah.
Okay.
Other questions, comments from the council? I'm going to make my comments then. It's irresponsible for us to move forward without a long-term plan. The budget as presented to us does not include provisions for starting our own fire station or augmenting services of any way above and beyond what we've got going on right now. In light of that, we have to discuss where we stand long terms. Without the UUT, we would be bankrupt right now, would be the first point I'd like to make. So the UUT is keeping us alive, but it is not covering the costs as proposed for maintaining Fire Station 60 open. We could not continue to have Fire Station 60 open under the current, with current revenues, we'd be broke in 2021. If we do nothing, we have a balanced budget, we're going forward, but we would have reduced, the reduced fire services that we have right now, which a lot of people think are questionable or that we need improved services. And then we would be subject to the property tax for the UUT being reapproved in 2020, and I personally think it's unlikely if we don't have fire services in place. Our other option would be to continue our own, create our own fire services or start a GPA with other cities, in which case we would have to, we have a bogey right now of about $3 million for police and fire. Based on the JPA that just came out between Idlewild and San Jacinto, and the comparison with CAL FIRE was approximately a 20% reduction to the CAL FIRE and the Idlewild Fire Service, which is a ray of hope there, that the costs that they're looking at is about a 20% reduction. Assuming that police services remain the same, we would need a bogey of about $1.4 million for fire. Using that extrapolation and using CAL FIRE's existing proposal, it would take it down to roughly $1.5 million, which puts it in the ballpark if we got a JPA going forward or could find a way of reducing fire services to that, to those costs. And there's, I believe personally, a good chance of reducing the costs of police services so that
Are you talking about the 16-17 budget? Is that what this is?
maybe we need to be looking at the cost of those.
No, right tonight, we need to be looking at 16-17.
I have the
budget.
floor.
I understand
Offered
that.
everybody you can have a chance to respond.
No, I'm asking us
after
to
I'm
bring
done.
it back to the
I have the floor.
situation.
I rule I have the floor.
You rule, you have the floor.
Yes.
I don't know that it is, but it apparently, can I call for the vote then? Okay, I call for the vote. I'm sorry, Tim, but we've got to talk about the budget. That's what we're here for, not for your opinion of where we're going or what's going to happen after you're on the council. So I'm asking us to call for the vote.
Point of order, if you call for the votes, you don't make any comments.
Okay, well then I've stopped. Thank you.
Yes, you should have a while ago.
You're calling for the question.
I'm calling for the question.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved and second. Call for the question.
Do we have discussion now?
No discussion on calling for the question.
I'm calling for the question. We need a roll call.
Councilmember Aaron-Krantz?
Would you mind repeating what we're voting on?
Calling for the question.
The adoption of resolution 2016.
Or do we have to vote on call for the question?
Well, that's the question.
Okay, so this will be to approve the resolution.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hagerty?
Yes.
Councilmember Warren?
Yes?
Councilmember Zites,
Hell no.
Mayor Brown.
Heck no. Mr. Aaron Kratz?
I voted.
Did you? I didn't hear it. So what's the result? I didn't hear Mr. Aaron Kratz.
Approved 3-2.
Kangaroo.
Well, I'm not going to be a party to another veto of discussion of facts. With that, I'm out of here.
Okay, it's been the adoption of the resolution number 2016-23 approving the city's fiscal budget for 2016-17 has been approved. At this point, we have city manager comments.
With regards to the fire update, we have, as I emailed all the council, we got the three-year proposal from County Fire. Not the numbers obviously we're looking for, 1.8 in year one, 1.9 in year two, and just over 2 million in year three. We have correspondence going back at the state level we're asking questions why. Basically, if we look at it, we know there are some cities in California that are doing 1.4 that are starting July 1st, 2017. And so we're trying to figure out, we're asking at the state level, the director, why is it $500,000 more in Riverside County as opposed to everywhere else in the state CAL FIRE deals with? And so we're going to find out that answer hopefully quickly rather than later. I've also had a discussion this week with the fire chief of Idlewild, asking them about their JPA and what they're doing with San Jacinto. It looks like a very interesting option for us. If we can't get pinned down CAL FIRE and we can't wait. I mean, we have to have a solution in place no later than July 1st of 17. And so they're more than willing to take on members. Their only concern with us is ability to pay because of the sunset of the UUT. They're telling me right now they haven't quite got all their costing right now. Their big outstanding issue is dispatch, and so they've got bids out, and they'll know in the next month or so which dispatch they're going to use. Right now they're based on their current dispatch, because they do use county. They're looking at probably a 45 to 50% savings in dispatch costs. And just initially, I think they're quoting right now 1.5 to 1.6 to reopen Station 60 with a three-man agent company with a medic. That's initial. So obviously, if we choose to become a member of the JPA, we can go down that road shortly. I'm hoping to get find out what's going on with CAL FIRE sooner rather than later. So I've got some people working on that as well to get us. We'll get that information out to them. You'll get copies of the letter that's going out to CAL FIRE, and then hopefully, worst cases, hopefully we'll have a sit-down meeting with them at the state level and find out, why is this county running roughshod over everybody else?
And can we ask them for a bid?
That's one of the questions.
Yeah.
County Fire is telling us they have an exclusive operating agreement with the state. The CAL FIRE, we have to negotiate with the county. The county contract I've seen does not have that verbiage. If there's a separate agreement, I haven't seen it, nor has CAL FIRE showed it to me.
And wouldn't that have had to be in the contract that we signed?
Not in our contract that we signed. I would assume it would have been in the contract between the county and the state.
Oh, okay.
And it is not in there. If they have a separate agreement that addresses that, they might, but I haven't seen it.
Right.
I mean, I've just heard rumors, oh yeah, there is such a thing, but nobody has shown me an exclusive operating agreement. And so we're trying to get those questions answered. The big thing is, how can one city in California be $500,000 cheaper than another city? And with regards to the exclusive operating right, for example, the county of San Luis Obispo pretty much does what Riverside County does. San Luis Obispo County does not have their own fire department. They contract with CAL FIRE, just like Riverside County. However, the cities in San Luis Obispo County have the option. They can contract with county fire, like we do, or they can contract directly with the state, with CAL FIRE, their choice. And CAL FIRE, both ways, allows them to choose the level of service, whether they want a 2-man BLS engine company like they have in Calamasa, a 2-man engine company with a medic, 3-man or 4-man engine company with 2 medics. It's the service level that the city wants, and that's a state policy that they allow the local the contracting agency to choose level of service.
And isn't Cal Mesa currently negotiating for a 2-man?
They currently have a 2-person engine company with BLS, so they don't have medics on their engine. I know they're exploring a volunteer department. That's one of their options. I don't know if the county fires come back with some other options to them. I know that extra person is a big contention between Cal Mesa and the county.
Well, didn't the county tell us that if we went to a 2-man, that they would not provide mutual aid to us?
If the city, if the city were to, that's what I've heard. They haven't told me personally that, but the information from what I've been able to gather is if the city does anything less than the minimum the county standard, that basically mutual aid, automatic aid, both, pretty much be on a case-by-case basis. They'll evaluate. So by the time they're done evaluating, the incident's full-blown or over, and it's kind of pointless. So basically, by saying they'll evaluate, you can pretty much read between the lines, they're not coming.
So that's not...
Unless it's on the outskirts and they're doing structure protection for their other contract cities that border us.
Okay.
That's my report.
So, do you have any other things to comment?
No, with regard to, and the interesting thing is I asked the Chief of Idlewild about expanding the JPA to include police services. I think the JPA would be very interested in that. I know the Chief was a little hesitant. I made some suggestions about how it could work to take away some of his fears, a couple of fears, which were reasonable, but with regards to how management structure. But my belief is that police will work regionally well, and I think if you can have 2 departments, both chiefs reporting to the board. And so right now the JPA makeup is a full 10-member board, 5 members of the fire board from Idlewild, and 5-member council from San Jacinto. Obviously, as more JPA members come on board, they'll probably be looking at restructuring how the board makeup is.
So are you encouraged by what you're hearing?
Yes, worst case is if nothing works out with the county or the state, I think the JPA is, I think, the way to go. I think that's something we can get involved in. They're more than willing to let us choose our level of service. I know the issue for them with regards to San Jacinto has been mutual aid. They're still waiting to hear from the county. One of the things going for San Jacinto, though, is Saboba, and they have their own department. And so they'll have mutual aid regarding with them. And so, but they still need it. They're working also out with Hemet, which I'm assuming they'll be able to do. But then you have the county outlying areas, and if you come out, so what do you have there? The outskirts of Paris, maybe Moreno Valley. So then that's when you get county fire involved.
We need a casino.
Just saying. Can't find an Indian burial ground somewhere in the
I'm sure we can.
Maybe you can talk to Eddie DeBartolo. Maybe he can put a paddle wheel on the lake. I don't know. So, but that would be within the POA's preview, not the city's. So, but that's where we are with fire. I'm very encouraged. Unfortunately, what the citizens aren't going to want to hear is it looks like the station would be closed for this fiscal year.
You want to do it right.
Yes.
Yes.
So we don't run, I mean, the great thing about it is our costs are fixed. We know it's 1.2 million this year. It gives us the opportunity to see if the state gets the county to play ball, and if not, we can go down this JPA route. If we know that's what it is, and I think by showing that we have a more cost-effective fire service approach, that gives you better information if you choose to go out and extend the UUT.
Can I ask you to make one more, something clear that you've already made to me?
Sure.
It has to do with the numbers. I know that ideally we want 60 open.
Yes.
Right now, because we want to do it right, we have to do another year of negotiating.
Right, unfortunately, I've come in at the end of this, and so
Right.
I've kicked it up a lot faster than it probably was. And so, but like I said, you don't want to rush it.
No.
If I can get the sooner I get 60 open, the better. I know what the council's direction is. They want 60 open. They want it with a medic.
Right.
That's been my approach.
That's what we gave you, and I'm glad that's the direction we're
Yes.
going in. In the meantime, it's been indicated to me that the level of service is acceptable standards at this point.
Okay.
Having it exactly the way it is that correct?
I have not. What you mean by county standards?
Yes.
Well, yes, because they're actually a member of the cost sharing agreement, so they signed off on this. And at the July 6th meeting, I'll be bringing forward the updated agreement and cost sharing,
Okay.
which
so-
is basically what you signed, what you approved last year.
Right. Eventually, we're going to have to be addressing with the public, and I can put this under council comments, but eventually we'll have to be addressing with the public, what level of service do they want? Are they satisfied with our numbers at this point, according to the standards, the statewide standards? Our numbers of service and response time are within acceptable standards. Are they willing to extend the UUT in order to open 60 to provide better than? So it is basically what we're going to have to bring this to the public and decide if that's what they want.
Right.
Given the fact that the vote on the UUT has to be done in a council election year, and this council election year and the election period is upon us,
Right.
you're probably looking at 2018.
That's what I was
2018
thinking.
and 2020.
By that time, we have our feet solid.
Right,
So-
we'll know which path we're going, and like I said, I have to let the county know by August 1st whether or not we're going to start our own fire department, and at that July meeting, I'll be recommending not starting our own fire department.
Okay. And all of you that are out there, start spreading that seed that we're all gonna have, I don't know if we're gonna have to do town hall meetings or what we're gonna have to do, but this has gotta be a public comment section, so we'll make sure.
Madam Mayor, could I request that this portion of the meeting about the fire update be one of the exceptions for verbatim minutes, so that the people who aren't here, I know Mr. Guzman was out of the room, and the council members who have left the meeting could read that?
Absolutely,
Yes,
can we
does
do
the
that?
council agree that this portion of the meeting be verbatim?
Yeah.
Okay.
You got that direction, so we'll just add that to the summary minutes at the end. And on my update, we'll do verbatim.
So are we in council comments at this time now?
I mean, I'm finished with my report. Does the council have any more questions for me?
I had a question when I got in the fire, forgot it was not to do with fire, and I can't remember what it was, so can't talk about it.
If it's not fire, we'll move on.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
No, I would just like to thank you, as I said earlier, for your optimism. I think we're in good hands. More so than we've been in the past as far as fire is concerned. It's a very delicate and touchy subject, but I think we're going to prevail. This may not be necessary, but I'm going to apologize for the two fellow council people who walked out of here. I don't think that was appropriate. I certainly don't appreciate it. On a personal level, I think it's quite childish. But hopefully we'll all win and get our way, and then we don't have to storm out of these meetings. My interest is the city of Canyon Lake, and I want to make sure that the city of Canyon Lake is preserved. And it's not going to be done with the actions that I saw here tonight. So we are going to have to work hard, and I'm sure that we're going to have to convince people that the utility tax will need to continue. And I know that's a dirty word, but over time I think that people get used to it. So that really concludes what I had to say. I would like to make one other comment that was brought up earlier. I know that we're closing this meeting in the honor of Bill Tremblay. I would have attended the funeral yesterday had I been able to be there. I couldn't, but I had the pleasure of serving 2 years on the POA board with Bill Tremblay, and I know what a fine man he was, and he certainly will be missed. And with that, I think I'll just stop talking.
Okay, Vicki?
I have none, I'm going to reserve them for the
This
July
is-
meeting.
Oh, okay,
Council comments, I have some updates on water and animals.
okay.
Not your animals, not the vector animals, I don't want to know about the mosquitoes.
Okay.
Mine are puppies and kittens and bunnies, okay? Fluffy and cute.
I will make a comment. I'm disappointed in two of our council people. I am not saying that down the road at some point, if we have to face reality, and reality is that we just simply cannot afford to provide appropriate services for the city, at that point, we do need to deal with looking at disincorporation and annexation. At this point, I'm just asking for a little more time, because if we can save money with the fire and with the police, it's very likely that we will be able to sustain ourselves. Obviously not after 2020 when the UUT tax stops, because without that we cannot sustain the city. My feeling is if people are satisfied with the level of their service, and I think the majority of the people really would like the city to remain a city, that they will renew the tax, and depending on how much we're able to save, we might even be able to reduce the tax. I don't know, we might have to increase it, but my mind is not shut. I'm not kicking the can down the road. I'm simply asking for enough time to establish if we have to do the desperate thing, and that's shut down the city. Because if there's any way of not doing that, I think we owe it to the city to try, and that's what we're working on right now. And it's looking positive. So I think another few months is not asking for too much, and we will know soon enough what we have to do, and then it'll go to the city, and the people will vote. You want to keep the tax or you want to disincorporate, and it'll be their decision, not ours. So
We have lots of options.
that's my comments, and since we're not going to do committee reports, I won't say anything about that. And it's almost 9 o'clock. I think that's due time to shut down. So if there are no objections, I close the meeting at 5 minutes of 9.
You're making it.
Time to go.